So I think if the way that you phrase the question, that would be the easiest answer would be Oklahoma City and
Yeah,
Cleveland
but
because I think Cleveland
no,
and
he already
Boston.
picked it. You can't use
No,
it.
no, no. I know.
Yeah.
I'm going in a different direction. Don't worry.
Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience presented by Underdog. Shifting gears just a little bit for the Pat Mayo Experience, we are talking about the NBA. Complete playoff preview, series pricing, future bets, and everything you need to know to get yourself caught up. So you good people, smash the like out there. You sub to Mayo Media Network. That'd be very helpful, and you can learn along with me as I bring on my guests right now. First up, a former regular on the show for a very long time, now at ETR, Drew Dinkmeyer. Sir, it's really exciting to talk to you again.
I know it's a lot's happened since we last talked, Pat. I'm a dad now, so that's new. And yeah, and the NBA playoffs are here, and I'm very excited to talk about them with you. I did not realize how much of a under the radar NBA head you were until I listened to Davis Maddox Takecast appearance earlier this year, where you talked about NBA ratings, talking about old school NBA. The people don't know, Pat, that you've had your fair share of NBA taste in the past.
It's true. The last time I think I went to anything significant, Aaron Lindquist from Odds Shopper is on too. Eric, are you a part of the dad team or no?
Not yet. Working on that here with the wife, but overall, congratulations, Drew. That's a fantastic way to intro it. I have nothing cool to back that up with, but it makes sense that Pat has less interest maybe in the NBA than before because you went from 2 teams in Canada to 1. That's just good math.
And it went from one team in Canada where I lived and got to go to a finals game to watch them win the NBA championship to them being absolutely horrendous and me moving out of that city and not caring anymore.
It's a good way to do it.
Drew, you're in New York now, right?
Yep.
So is it all Knicks all the time for you? Or are you still all Bulls all the time?
So my fandom has wavered over the years. I'm not a good laundry bro, as Adam Levitan would say. I grew up a Bulls fan. Their front office has absolutely betrayed me over the years, and so I gave up on them. I cannot be a Knicks fan. Growing up a Chicago Bulls fan in the 1990s, you cannot be a New York Knicks fan. So while I appreciate the energy that they bring to the city and the positivity that they bring to the city, I cannot root for the Knicks. So Nikola Jokic has stolen my heart, and I've become a Denver Nuggets fan over the last few years.
Is that like a part of the ETR contract? Anything Denver you have to root for now?
I was pro Jokic before my ETR days, so they kind of it just worked out. It's nice that when I have to go make corporate trips and whatnot, I can go see him live. But yeah, we are big Denver contingent at Establish the Run.
Eric, I lived in New York for one summer, and it was the year where the Pacers beat the Knicks in the second round with the Roy Hibbert resurgence year, and everyone. But it was the first time that they had won a first round series in so long, and the city was amped. It's nothing like I've ever because even for the decade plus I lived in Toronto, the Leafs sucked every single year. I assumed if they had made it to the second round of the playoffs during that span, that the city just would have been bonkers the entire time. But alas, they didn't. But with the Knicks in New York, it was like nothing I had ever experienced sports-wise before. Where are you at, and where do you align with? Or are you just like Drew? You're kind of agnostic, let me win my bets?
I'm so glad that you guys have happy memories of happy sports times because as a Minnesota sports fan, where both of my parents are coming from Minnesota, all I know is pain, suffering, and sadness. And the Minnesota Timberwolves constantly find new and interesting ways to disappoint me. However, sneaking into the 6th seed seems like a good situation to avoid the play-in tournament, but you never know what you're going to get with this team. It's feast famine, and obviously after last year's run, it's really hard to imagine what an NBA Finals would actually feel like. So I think it might actually kill my father. So we want to take it a little bit easy, Minnesota. It's tough times over here, though. Nothing ever ends up going right in the end.
I want to give Underdog a quick shout out. If you use Underdog or you use code Mayo at Underdog right now, you'll get yourself a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. You'll get yourself a free pick in the Pick'em game, and they just dropped their playoff basketball promo. It's called the Extender. So what happens is you can play your way with increasingly bigger boosts each round of the playoffs. You start a playoff series by using your Game 1 boost, and then continuing to use another boost for Game 2, Game 3, etc. Now, if it goes only 4 games, then that's the end of the boost. However, the longer the series get, the more boosts that that you get. So instead of a 30% profit boost, you get a 50% profit boost or 60% profit boost. So you're going to be begging for these games to go 7 games. And you hop on Underdog. It's the best place to make picks during the basketball playoffs. And you can get started right now with code Mayo. And you'd be kind of crazy to not take advantage of some of these profit boosts. You get the deposit bonus boost. Then you get the profit boost that they're basically just throwing money at you right now to get you on Underdog to make picks for the NBA playoffs. So I highly recommend that you do it. So, guys, I'm going to throw the floor back to you. I don't normally let the GIFs, not matter. The guests have this much autonomy, but Drew, where do you want to start with the NBA playoffs? Is it with the play-in or should it be with the seeds? Because does the play-in really mean anything outside the Warriors being in it and them maybe being able to win a series?
In terms of teams that are live to win series, yeah, I think that's it. That's really it. Oklahoma City is so dominant, so whoever is going to end up being the 8 seed there. I mean, if Memphis were able to win the play-in game and play against Houston, you could maybe have some exposure there that you could maybe think that they could win. But Oklahoma City's been so dominant. I think whoever they get, they're probably going to roll through. And then on the East side, the 2 top teams, Boston and Cleveland, are just a totally step level ahead of the Eastern Conference play-in team. So yeah, I think we should start with the series stuff. And I mean, since Eric was talking about his 6 seed Minnesota Timberwolves, we might as well just start there with the Timberwolves and the Lakers.
Well, I mean, leading with the Lakers, it seems like you're not only working for ETR, but ESPN now. That makes a ton of sense.
Anything that has an E in front of it, I'm supporting, Pat.
Eric, okay, well, you cap the series for us. So let's start to think about it in terms of, do you think that the T-Wolves can win this series?
Yeah, they absolutely can. I mean, this is going to be the interior dominance versus the backcourt dominance that you get on the Lakers side. I mean, we definitely have some advantages in this one. Jackson Hayes up against Rudy Gobert, and Rudy Gobert, not somebody you're ever going to think about as like an offensive stalwart by any means, but you look at some of the rebounding opportunities that you're going to get with a bigger front court. And Naz Reid, coming off of last year's just insane series against Denver, probably the best series of the entire playoffs last year. I think that there are ways that if we take the front court advantages up against the Lakers and just kind of stack it, Luka Doncic, he's going to be incredible. LeBron James continues to defy time. There's no doubt that there's going to be massive offensive advantages for them. And defensively, that was our calling card once upon a time. But I mean, Mike Conley's never really performed all that well in some of these playoffs. Not really sure how he fits in on this series. This could end up being like a Nickeil Alexander-Walker series. And not to go back to a Denver game, but we recently saw the closest thing to a playoff game with Denver and Minnesota going up against it for that overtime festivities. The just 60-point triple-double Nikola Jokic for Drew's guy. Unbelievable stuff, but it ended up being Nickeil Alexander-Walker who is the difference maker. And there were a number of series last year as well. He's so good on the defensive side that if we can get him to knock down shots on the perimeter, I mean, playing through Ant is going to be what you do, but JJ Redick's going to have some stuff schemed out to double team him. That's really what Denver tried to do throughout that entire game and through the series last year. Make other guys on Minnesota beat you. And Julius Randle, what's nice is he's not under the Tibbs regime anymore. So I think we could see a spot where, like, I think every team through and through, we're getting the best available players. Everybody's healthy outside of like Dallas with no Kyrie Irving. I can't even think of like a play-in tournament team that doesn't have 100% guys going here. But Minnesota, it's basically, can Julius Randle do enough to maintain? Can we get production anywhere off the bench whatsoever? Because I think the Lakers, that's definitely going to be where they struggle, where the Nuggets struggle, where a number of teams throughout these playoffs struggle.
Drew, the Lakers are a minus 175 favorite here, plus 145 on the other side. We're drawing all of our numbers from coolbet.com today to go check it out. Is this a series where you would at least, let's say, plus 145? Obviously, they're not substantial underdogs, but how live do you think they are to beat the Lakers?
I think this is a particularly difficult matchup for Minnesota. I think one of the advantages that Minnesota has had over the last few years as they've been constructing this roster is they've had a size advantage over kind of everybody in the league. They're just so much bigger than most of the teams that they play. And obviously this was accentuated last year with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns. But even this year, Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle and Naz Reid kind of in the front court. Jaden McDaniels is your 3 is very big there. And Jaden McDaniels is a very good individual one-on-one isolation defender. They also have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who Eric mentioned, who's also an above average sized guard, who's also a very good individual defender. And they just kind of ball hawk and really wear teams down with their physicality. The challenge is the Lakers are exceptional at creating fouls, getting to the foul line, and working through kind of that depth. And if the games are called in a looser whistle way, that'll put a lot of pressure on Minnesota to stay out of foul trouble with guys like Jaden McDaniels, who's had challenges throughout his career, been much better this year. In addition, Jaden McDaniels and we should say Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert last year in the series against Dallas was actually very good. Luka Doncic put him on some highlights that people are going to remember and be like, oh, Luka Doncic kills Rudy Gobert. And Rudy Gobert is going to struggle with Luka Doncic when he gets isolated on an island on the perimeter, as any big in the league would. But he was very effective in that series. The challenge is the Lakers have so much size. So it's not just LeBron James and Luka Doncic, and they have backup depth with Jared Vanderbilt and Dorian Finney-Smith. Jackson Hayes is probably not going to play a ton. They're going to play a lot of smaller lineups in this series, which are the lineups that have played Rudy Gobert off the floor in the past series. Ty Lue was so effective in this, and kind of playing 5-out series that really put pressure on Rudy Gobert's ability to protect the rim by making him space out to the floor. The Lakers are going to do a ton of that with Dorian Finney-Smith and Rui Hachimura and LeBron James. And so I think of all the matchups that Minnesota could have gotten in the first round, I think this is a particularly difficult one, and I would not be betting them as underdogs in the series.
Eric, who do you think would have been the optimal matchup for Minnesota in your mind? Because it sounded like you thought like the Lakers are not so bad compared to maybe some other teams. Was everyone angling to see if they could? I mean, you didn't want to go into the play-in, but is playing Houston really what you want to do?
Yeah, I think Houston would have been a better matchup. I mean, Houston, the best rebounding team in the NBA. You keep Rudy Gobert out on the floor against an Alperen Sengun, a true big underneath. And now you're going to get some of these Lakers lineups that Drew alluded to, where it's just so hard to envision Rudy Gobert. I mean, that's really, I mean, he really performed well, I think, throughout the entire playoffs last year. You had a Karl Anthony Towns also that just changed the complexion. We did a salary dump to get rid of him. It was a brutal deal at the beginning of this season. I'm not a huge Julius Randle guy by any means, but you look at Houston, outside of Fred VanVleet with Toronto, outside of Dylan Brooks with Memphis, who else on that roster has any type of playoff experience? You don't really see anybody up and down. And Minnesota went through the gauntlet last year into the Western Conference Finals. Feel as though it's more experienced, and drawing Houston at the 2, I think would have been a much better situation for them. Lower variance basketball as opposed to going up against a Lakers team that, I mean, they can run them out of the gym really quickly. And this isn't the same defensive team that we've seen in years past. I mean, we got a 37-year-old Mike Conley out there running the point and never really been a huge playoff guy here, has really struggled at times throughout his entire Utah and Memphis tenures in the playoffs, because you kind of get to pick on the one guy on the floor that's a little bit more gettable, and that's always been Conley here, and it will be again for any minutes he's out there against Luka and company. So yeah, I think the Lakers are particularly tough. This is definitely not one of those series that I would be laying with the dog. I'm obviously cheering for them, but best of luck to us figuring out exactly how to handle Austin Reeves, LeBron James, and Luka Doncic on the offensive end, because it's going to be a nightmare for Gobert.
Drew, is Houston the team that, in your mind, that people would want to see, despite the fact they've been good all year long? Because I hear a little bit of that pushback about the Thunder as well. It's like, well, they're good. And if you look at their numbers, they're historically good this year. But it comes back to the same thing. Like, we have not seen it, therefore we do not know if it's going to happen. Although everyone who's sharp seems to believe that it's going to happen. Everyone who doesn't seems like, oh, I want to see it before it happens. That's never a great way to start making bets, that you would just always bet on the same people who win every year until they don't win every year, and you're never ahead of the game. But Houston, there really does seem to be like, I don't know how real this is going to be 2 weeks from now.
I think it's I think the Western Conference is just very matchup driven on the whole. So I think some teams would have preferred Houston. I think what Eric was alluding to in terms of like Houston's advantages in terms of offensive rebounding and size and different things play into some of Minnesota's strengths. And so I think Minnesota certainly wouldn't have minded Houston as a matchup in the first round. I think like if we get Golden State in Houston, I think if Golden State had to pick their opponents in the first round, I think Houston would be towards the bottom of the list in terms of teams that they would pick, because of kind of their positional size, their ability to throw multiple waves of defenders at Steph Curry with Dylan Brooks and with Amen Thompson. We saw Amen Thompson really lock up Steph Curry in that last regular season game, and the pressure that size would put on Golden State's roster. So I think it's just very matchup driven. I think Minnesota would have preferred to see a Denver who they've had a lot of success against, and they know kind of how to play against. I think this Denver team is not as good as the team that Minnesota was able to beat last year. I think Minnesota's not as good without Karl-Anthony Towns, but I think they would have preferred to see them. I think they would have felt very comfortable in that series and kind of how to approach them. Remember that last regular season game that was an epic game with Jokic's 60-point triple-double. Minnesota was missing a couple key pieces due to suspension in that game. And so I think in general, like Minnesota wants to face teams that have ball dominant, smaller scoring guards, like traditional guards, not Luka Doncic guards, because they can throw waves of defenders at them with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, with Jaden McDaniels, and really make life tough on them. And I think that's what they've generally done with Minnesota and Jamal Murray, or with Denver and Jamal Murray, excuse me. So I think they would have felt more comfortable there. I think the bigger scoring guards, especially when they come in waves like LeBron and Luka Doncic, I think are just more challenging because the big advantage Minnesota has had as size is negated quite a bit against the Lakers.
Eric, what's the difference between OKC and the rest of the West versus something like Cleveland in the East? I mean, they're both one seeds. They have legitimate chances of winning. The market seems to... I mean, obviously the West is stronger than the East right now from top to bottom. You just have more teams at the bottom. But in a historical context, how good is this OKC team? Because I've seen enough, this is the 60-win Atlanta Hawks team that couldn't beat LeBron. That's not true, right?
I don't know. They might be. One thing that we haven't really talked about is like what you get in terms of minutes come postseason time and like what the upside can be for your roster. There's like nobody on OKC that's averaging over 32 minutes a game. And now you can ramp that up for an SGA to 40 minutes. You can play Isaiah Hartenstein, who really fixes a lot of the problems they had last year in rebounding and defense at the rim. Just so many things that he's able to do where you up his minutes come postseason time. They can play certain matchups. They can bring scoring off the bench with an Isaiah Joe on the perimeter and Aaron Wiggins, who has showed out a little bit in these recent games that haven't mattered as much. He can definitely get you a bucket when you need it in the second unit. But overall, there's such an upside. And then we haven't even brought up Jalen Williams here on this team too, where he's having his standout season. And you go through what these minutes can be for them in a 7-game series or as you start taking on better teams. And whereas the New York Knicks, we always see Tom Thibodeau pushing guys to the limit. There's not really a ceiling for what that team can be. Oklahoma City with Alex Caruso being somebody that you can put into on-ball situations, probably one of the best premier on-ball defenders back with Drew's Chicago team there last season or last couple years with the Lakers in the bubble. I mean, he is such a difference maker, and this team has been constructed in a way. I mean, Sam Presti deserves all the credit in all the world. Not only do they have draft picks for years and years to come, but they're going to be able to live without certain pieces here or there, but they find these unbelievable pieces like Alex Caruso that you get in a 7-game series and you have to deal with him on ball for, Fred VanVleet or somebody of that nature as you start getting into crunch time. He is such a difference maker on the floor. So Oklahoma City, I think, might be better than they're currently priced at -140 to win the West, best number. I find them to be very imposing with all the different dimensions that they now have covered with the acquisitions of Caruso and Hartenstein.
So, Drew, what's the difference between Cleveland in the East and OKC in the West? Because as Eric just pointed out, I'm just looking right now, +190 to win the NBA championship for Oklahoma City, 6.5 to 1 for Cleveland.
I think the big difference between those two teams is Oklahoma City's level of dominance has come against primarily the Western Conference, right? You play opponents in the opposite conference just twice a year, and you play opponents in your own conference, 3 to 4 times a year. And so I think the level of dominance that we've seen from those two teams looks on paper somewhat similar, but the schedule strength difference between the two is gigantic. I also think that the Cavs did a good job at the deadline with the acquisition of DeAndre Hunter in terms of trying to diversify how their roster can play. But I think Oklahoma City has a lot more roster diversity in their ability because of the size of their guards. Like one of the big things about OKC is the positional size. They're considered a small team overall because they're not a great rebounding team. They've been better when they've had Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren playing together on the floor, but positionally they're much larger. Darius Garland still a little bit smaller as a guard. Donovan Mitchell, like a normal size 2 guard. They're not as positionally dominant from a size perspective, even though they're they're a big team because they play Jared Allen and Evan Mobley together. So I think those two teams have had historically great seasons, but I think Oklahoma City's has come against much tougher competition.
Well, let me swing this back to you as well. Why are the Celtics so much better than the Cavs in the betting market? Are they efficiently better, or is it just they're the defending champions? They have all the same guys who have been awesome for half a decade now, and we're yet to see it with Cleveland. Is that where this price discrepancy is coming in?
I think that is largely where the price discrepancy is coming in. I don't see a lot of difference. And if I just zoomed in on this season between these two teams, between Cleveland and Boston, I don't see a ton of difference. Cleveland played competitive games in those head-to-head individual season matchups. Boston got the best of them in those. But I think Boston is slightly better, but the markets have favored Boston significantly throughout the course of the season. I think one thing that's been a little bit underreported or undertaken into account in the playoff pricing right now, because I think there's just really little concern for the first round, is that Jaylen Brown has not been healthy in the last month of the season, to the point where he needed to play 2 games of their final 3 or 4 games to get to the 65 game mark to be in consideration for all NBA teams, whatnot. And they just need to play him out there, get them out there for 15 minutes a game. And he was unable to do that in those 2 games. And so I'm not sure, where he is from a health perspective. I don't think there's any concerns about how it would impact round 1. And these, before we get into round 2, that's another 2 weeks. So he should be fully healthy, but I have not seen the market price in any concern on that front. And then I think the fact that Boston has not only just done it in terms of climbing the mountain and winning the championship last year, but we, to your point, Pat, in terms of giving credit to teams who may have not won the ultimate prize, but been competing and getting to the finals year after year. This team has won many, many more playoff series than they've lost in the last 5 or 6 years. Ultimately, kind of climbing this mountaintop last year, finally. So I think the playoff experience, the trust in that group being able to get there, and then the other thing with Boston is whenever they have had their core together with Kristaps Porzingis out there, they've been at that like OKC level of dominant compared to everybody else. If you look through the regular season, they did plenty of managing during the course of the season with like 1 game Derek White's out, 1 game Drew Holiday's out, 1 game Jason Tatum's out, 1 game Jaylen Brown's out. But when they're all together, they're exceptional. And so I think that's why the market views them as favorites over Cleveland. I would view them as favorites over Cleveland, but I do think the market is a little stronger than the price that I put on those 2 teams at this point.
Do you have a similar reaction, Eric, that Boston's better, but they're not 3 times as better as the market would suggest?
Yeah, definitely. Kenny Atkinson, I mean, he's going to win Coach of the Year. He's been the absolute difference maker, I think, for what Cleveland's put together. And that's just the ability to knock down threes, the ability to kind of do what Boston does to some extent. And also brought up there was the DeAndre Hunter acquisition. If you look at Darko or a lot of the projection models that I like to really take into account players going forward, DeAndre Hunter isn't as good as a Karis LeVert, but for the Cleveland Cavaliers in a playoff series, he absolutely is. He gives you a little bit more of that wing depth that they have been lacking there. Max Strus, decent enough at times, knockdown shooter, but defensively, hopefully DeAndre Hunter can keep it together for them, because you get up against Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. You have to just think, if you're Cleveland, all right, I understand we might have some tougher series, like Orlando played them tough last year. You might have to play 6 games, 7 games, but there were so many injuries that happened to Cleveland last year. We didn't really see Cleveland get their full team together to take on Boston. And I don't think that that's being factored in enough too, where now you have a better coach, you have a better scheme. Evan Mobley can go out to the perimeter and shoot threes for the first time in his career. You have guys surrounding him there. You have that interior defense. And there's just so many matchup-based things that I think Cleveland is now probably feeling better. Now, I do feel the same way Drew does, where I would be valuing Boston. I look at Boston as the favorite in the East, but it's gotten a little bit wide for my liking. And there's no doubt that plus 700 now for them to go out and win the finals here on DraftKings at the moment. That's just a big number to be staring at for a team that, in terms of point differential, in terms of individuals on that bench now too. Not that you need to have a ton of bench guys coming out there when you're going to play 40 minutes of Garland and Donovan Mitchell a night, but it's gotten a little bit wide where you got to be favoring the Cleveland side for sure at the price.
Outdoor golf season is almost here, but is your swing ready? With 126 X-Golf locations across 38 states, it's never been easier to dial in your swing year-round. I can speak to this. Go into the simulators all winter long, especially the good ones. You can go to crappy simulators. You don't want to go there. You want to go to X-Golf and really prep your game and hit the season inspiring. X-Golf's state-of-the-art simulators let you play full rounds, tee to green with unmatched short game realism. X-Golf's auto tee system ensures you're always ready to bomb a drive. No delays or automatic two-putts, just real, competitive golf in a lively sports bar environment. Love a little competition? X-Golf's handicap leagues and tournaments give every golfer a shot at winning incredible prizes. Upcoming spring tournaments include the Majors, where you could win a beach or mountain vacation, or the Cinco de Mayo Scramble, win a trip to New Belgium Brewery in Asheville, and that is just the start. So visit playxgolf.com to find your nearest X-Golf and book your tee time today. Again, trust me on this, you're going to want to go to X-Golf, so visit playxgolf.com. Fellas, your wife is already probably pretty familiar with Skims. I know my wife was when I got my Skims in the mail. They're like, "What, did you get me something from Skims?" I'm like, "No, got it for myself," because they're big into men's underwear right now. I've already mentioned that I used to wear boxer shorts, like the bunchy ones, make you look like you have like fupas on the go at all time. You don't want those. We're in 2025. You want some nice stretchy shorts because you're probably an active guy, and even if you aren't, you just want the most comfortable version of underwear that you want, and that is why you need to go to Skims and get their underwear right now. It is the most comfortable pair of underwear I've ever worn. As I mentioned before, like I said, it's like you're wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. Even though I wear underwear every day, I had not switched to the underwear that was right for me. And now I can wear them to bed, I can wear them working out, I can wear them playing golf, and I can wear them while I'm doing this show and reading this ad to you. That's why I love the stretch briefs. Those are the ones that I like the best. Now, you can get the 3-inch boxer brief if you're a traveler and you go around. Like, those are really good too, but I love the stretch briefs. Those are the ones that I'm wearing 24/7 these days. Not the same pair, mind you. I do wash them, but I bought so many that I just have it in my entire wardrobe right now. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com and any Skims store. Let them know that I sent you as well. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select my show in the drop-down menu that follows, Pat Mayo Experience, in case you don't know what you're listening to. Skims is the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, and USA Basketball. Skims.com. Is your hair thinning? You might want to do something about that. That's why I recommend Nutrafol. Let Nutrafol target the key root causes of your thinning hair and help you grow stronger, healthier strands from within. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1.5 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. Thinning hair is different for men and women, so a one-size-fits-all approach to hair growth doesn't cut it. Nutrafol has multiple formulas for men that are tailored to different life stages, such as a plant-based lifestyle, so you can get exactly what you need and customize it to yourself. Building a hair growth routine is simple. Purchase online, no prescription required, automated deliveries, and free shipping keep you on track. Start your hair growth journey with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering my listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code PATMAYO. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code PATMAYO. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code PATMAYO. If we take a look at the East versus the West and who has legitimate competition to actually come out and make the NBA Finals, Eric, we'll start with you. Is it just Cleveland and Boston in the East, or will you make a case, oh, no, the Knicks were just playing possum all year long? They can actually beat these good teams. Don't worry about that.
Well, coming off of the NCAA tournament, do I have the wherewithal to be able to just say, hey, 1 seed, straight chalk? I mean, like, I don't know what else to do. They're the 2 best teams, but we have 2 months of basketball left. And injuries are a thing. Health is a thing. Jaylen Brown, the question marks around him. Kristaps Porzingis is an ankle turn away at every single point in time for Boston having a completely different complexion. We've seen a lot of minutes for some of these other key contributors or guys who can contribute, whether that's Luke Cornett, Sam Hauser, such, but you don't want to be playing them if you don't have to. You want to be able to play all of those main core guys a lot of minutes. And as you work down through the board, I mean, Oklahoma City, they don't really have any issues once they acquired Hartenstein and Caruso. I just don't see ways where they're going to struggle in a 5, or they'll basically find ways to get out of some of these early series quickly. I don't know if they'll be like the Warriors dominant, where they went like 16-3, and just ran the table like a decade ago. It's not that level of dominance, but I mean, I'm trying to think of like the longest shot I'd be willing to take at the moment. I think it would have to be Denver because you simply look at Jokic. He's the best player in the league. Mike Malone, since the departure there, they've actually strung together some really nice games. Russell Westbrook being a little bit more complimentary and going to some more Pickett-based lineups, which I like. But Denver at 31-1. I think that's probably the furthest shot I'd want to take. Knicks, definitely not 35-1. Clippers are maybe interesting, but like I keep looking at Western Conference teams, which is ironic because the Oklahoma City Thunder are the favorites, but I just think the West has maybe more opportunities rather than just Boston or Cleveland, which there are just almost no scenarios pending where I see them not being the guys coming out of the East.
Drew, the only drawback I could think about the Thunder as a Canadian who watched the Canadian Olympic team in the Olympics, Jamal Murray sucked in that series, and he takes a lot of the heat in the tournament, but Shea wasn't that great either.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the issue that they've had is offensive diversity, is that they've kind of struggled to find different ways to score. They've been too reliant on Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in the playoffs. Last year, that was an issue. They didn't get enough production from Jalen Williams. They didn't get enough production from Chet Holmgren, kind of the others. I think those guys are more ready to kind of take on a little bit more of that production this year. Shea's been fine in the playoffs. He hasn't had any severe dips in the playoffs. International basketball is certainly different than the NBA in terms of not only the rules and the structure and the timing of quarters and different things. But I think ultimately, like if I had any concerns about Oklahoma City, it would be, can they have enough diversity in their offensive approach that they're not so reliant on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being consistently great to win them series. Because one of the things about NBA playoffs that's so unique is the game planning and how it evolves over the course of a 7-game series. And so you need to have different ways to play the game. We talk about this a lot in our podcast about how it's, which team has more chess pieces that they can put on the table, and deeper teams have the ability to do that. And Oklahoma City is a very deep team that has a lot of really good players and a lot of different chess pieces, but those chess pieces are mostly defensive alignment pieces. They're Alex Caruso, they're Isaiah Hartenstein. They're not as many kind of offensive forces to bring in and kind of create offensive diversity from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now he's been so good that they don't need it, but it's so good in a different way than Nikola Jokic is so good, right? Nikola Jokic is so good in that almost anybody you put out there can be elevated from an offensive perspective. Shai is so good that almost any defender you put against him can be mitigated from his offensive perspective, but he's not necessarily elevating all the pieces kind of around him because he's just such a good individual one-on-one player. So I think that would be the biggest concern, but ultimately I don't share a big concern on that. I just think if I had to point out a weakness for Oklahoma City, it would be just offensive diversity and how they go about scoring. In that they're also very reliant on 2-point production as opposed to 3-point production. They've improved that a bit with Isaiah Joe shooting, which had Holmgren shooting out to the 3-point line. Shai's improved that in terms of his willingness to take pull-up jumpers this year and pull-up threes. That will help a lot in terms of some of the offensive diversity in the playoffs. But that would be the only thing I could nitpick in terms of Oklahoma City in preparing for a long run here.
Eric, what Drew just pointed out about the non-reliance on threes, that just sounds to me like a team that could be susceptible to variance in a single game and might get beat by a team just like if they in the first round, if they don't win in 4 games, they win in 5 games because the other team hit 51% of their threes. What are you going to do? But I would think in the playoffs, with everything being primarily in the half court, so much less fast break points on the table for teams, that a reliance on certain types of 2-point scoring can really go a long way in helping you be consistent in every game.
Yeah, it can be consistent, but I think the best teams, if you look at like the shooting map, you're basically seeing everything coming from around the perimeter and then next to the basket these days. The mid-range, there are your exceptions, the DeMar DeRozans of the world where, he's been doing that for a decade plus. You have SGA, who's just revelatory. Kevin Durant just murdered the mid-range forever. But, I mean, these are elite type players or elite scorers, at least, that we're talking about there. It's not something you want to have sustained on your entire basketball team. And you look at a Boston team, 53.6 attempts are coming from the 3-point line. Everybody who comes off the bench, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, they are out there to shoot threes, to just truly, it's not even like upping the variance in some of those games. It's truly just hey, this is the better way to go about it. 3 is more than 2. And Golden State really trailblazed that early 2010s. And it's carried over into the modern NBA game. And whether, Adam Silver wants to do something about that or not is up for, discussion. It feels like at the beginning of every season. And then people start cooling down around playoff time because what I love about this year is like we have everybody healthy. It feels like there's been a couple of these random years where, they had the easiest path. Boston last year, whether it was Indy with Tyrese Halliburton, whether it was Donovan Mitchell. I mean, they've just had so many different injuries in the Eastern Conference that's paved the way for them. Should be a little bit tougher for them this year. But when you're looking at like 2-point efficiency, you're definitely looking more at like the centers, your true shooting percentages there, and just having some of the scoring there. But yeah, an SGA reliance on the mid-range is a little bit different because he's just so darn good at it that it's hard for me to poke any holes at it. But Boston's going to shoot a lot of threes. You're going to be looking at Cleveland shooting a lot of threes. They're actually the team that shoots the second most threes in the East at 45.7%, and they're making them at a 38.3% clip. They acquire Ty Jerome, who comes off the bench and just finds ways to get it done here. But the two best teams in the East both shoot the most threes and make the most threes. That's a recipe for winning just about all the time, regardless of 2-point distribution.
Drew, is there a zag to this, either offensively or defensively? Because it seemed like when the Warriors were doing it, no one could crack the code because they simply didn't have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. And now people have been conditioned to practice all of this over and over. And while they might not be as true of shooters as those guys, they have guys off the bench specifically for these things, which teams just didn't 10 years ago. But is there a way to zag back or do whatever you want that, hey, maybe we're not going to shoot threes at some point and we're just going to have kind of like what the Lakers had with Anthony Davis and LeBron a few years back, that maybe you do need to complement them with 3-point shooters on the outside, but just have two gigantic guys. And we're just going to do something completely different than any other team, because I would assume that most defenses now are designed to stop 3-point shooting and perimeter defense. That if you had two elite big men, that all of a sudden you could just get the easiest points.
I think it's already happening to some extent in the sense that, like, if you look at kind of true shooting percentage and offensive efficiency on 2-point attempts versus 3-point attempts, for the last decade, 3-point attempts have been more valuable than 2-point attempts. But over the course of the last decade, that gap has narrowed over time, and it's in part because of the factor that most teams have been so good at taking away the 3-point line and kind of contending that it's opening up kind of more efficiency for twos now. And there's also a component where so many teams have so few guys on their roster that even play that just can't shoot at all, that there's space now to create, to open up in the mid-range and to open up and get to the lane and get rim runs. So I think the league is kind of naturally evolving in that way. It's evolving in a way that if you're checking in on the NBA every so often, you might not notice as much, but I think it's naturally kind of evolved there. And we've seen also some of the double big teams, like we saw Minnesota make a really great run last year with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns. We saw Oklahoma City choose to go that route with Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren. We've seen Denver, a team that won an NBA championship a couple of years ago, doesn't have a lot of 3-point shooting. Didn't have a lot of 3-point shooting then. Relied on Nikola Jokic to generate a lot of paint points and a lot of efficiency that way. So I think, there's a lot of narrative around the game looking very similar. And I understand, if you pop in every once in a while, the games kind of look very similar, but there has been a lot of like micro evolution in the game in the last 5 to 10 years in terms of how offensive has structured. And I think there'll be continuing evolution because a lot of these big guys that are coming in the league can also shoot too. So there's just more, like, if you're big and can shoot, you're more valuable than small and can shoot. So I think the league's going to trend with more skills just in terms of shooting and always value size. And one of the things that we've seen from a lot of these teams that have made these big runs of late, outside of Golden State, they've been kind of the archetype that's been a little bit different. But the teams like Denver, big positional size, Boston, big positional size, meaning at every position, their guys are a little bit bigger than the normal position at that size. They don't necessarily have to play two centers on the floor at all times, but their guards are 6'5", their wings are 6'7". Like, all of that positional size kind of adds up. And so I think, Golden State was a little bit of an anomaly there, and that speaks to the brilliance of Steph Curry and the brilliance of Klay Thompson as well in terms of their shooting and Draymond Green's defensive brilliance. But I think in general, size has always mattered in the NBA. It will continue to matter, and the skills that are coming with some of that size is allowing you to see different types of roster builds going forward.
Eric, this is how they sold Raptors fans on the Raptors rebuild. It's like, everyone on the floor is at least 6'8". It's like, yeah, but they all fucking suck.
There was There was a buddy of mine who just went out to dinner recently and he sent me a picture. He was taking a picture with a 7-foot guy and he's like, "Oh, this is a professional athlete, right?" And I was like, I've never seen that person in my entire life. It is okay to be 7 foot and be insurance salesman. Like that is totally allowed in life, but size doesn't guarantee skill. But what we are seeing is this evolution also where the big men, whether that's Jokic, Alperen Şengün, a really nice playmaker in his own right, and then Kristaps Porzingis, kind of another Dirk Nowitzki type, where you step out, stretch the floor, pull the fives out to the perimeter. I mean, we're just seeing them be better at the things that matter from an analytic perspective at the same time that they have the size and the things on the defensive side of the ball or rebounding that they can really add in as well. I love the evolution of the NBA. I mean, the NBA has always kind of just been an interesting way of going about doing the same thing over and over again, which is just get the most talent in-house and then figure out how to mold it together. And that's, the Oklahoma City, the Boston recipe. It's like understanding that, the more minutes that you're able to get for a Drew Holiday, when you're ramping him from 28 minutes a game to 38, that's going to just be so darn valuable. But yeah, the Raptors, I don't even know what to say about your roster here at the moment. I mean, I like Jakob Poeltl. I like Scotty Barnes. I like Jamal Shed, even though, they can't find minutes for him with tanking and things of that nature. But Toronto is one of those teams that you're a piece or two away from actually having some fun. And the East, I mean, we'll see how things go, but it's just so stacked up here for Boston in its favor if they keep Tatum and Brown together for the next however many years. It's going to be tough to find your way out of there to begin with, but Toronto, yeah, you have reason for optimism, I think.
That's spoken by someone who sounds like they cheer for a team that never wins. Drew, the hard pieces to get together that Eric's talking about are the good players, are the hard ones to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Masai is definitely focused on positional size, and I think that's been largely to his credit, but I think they've lost a little bit on the shooting aspect, and I think you need all the skills to go along with the size, and so I'm optimistic on Scotty Barnes. RJ Barrett took a nice step forward when he was playing well, but there's just not a lot of shooting on the roster, and so you can have all the size you want in the world. If you're unable to shoot the ball and stretch those defenses out, then you're playing 90s basketball while everybody else is playing modern basketball.
Well, I want to go to your team now, Drew. We'll go to the Denver Nuggets. They are minus 133 against the Clips, who are plus 110. It's weird to see their series pricing versus their overall to win the NBA Finals pricing. Because Eric pointed out, it's 30-1 for Denver to win the NBA championship, 45-1 for the Clippers right now. That doesn't really sound like minus 133 plus 110 in a series when they're playing each other in the first round. And I did want to let everyone know, again, all these bets or all these odds are powered by coolbet.com. I am giving away a $5,000 trip to Toronto, actually, right now. Now, it's not about betting on basketball, it's about betting on golf. But if you just go to the description of this video or podcast, you can click on the link. It'll opt you into that contest. All you need is a Coolbet account. Now, you can only get a Coolbet account if you live in Canada and are outside of Ontario to win the trip to Toronto. But you get 2 days at the Canadian Open, Blue Jays Suite tickets, and tickets to the Pat Mayo Experience live show, Cuss Corner, June 7th in Toronto. The link to buy tickets to that is in the description as well. It's been 48 hours since tickets have been released, and it's almost sold out. So if you want to go get your tickets, I would suggest you getting them now. Is this the worst draw for the Nuggets, Drew, playing what's kind of the hottest team coming in?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, I don't think there was a particularly great draw out there for Denver. I think Houston would have been probably the best draw. I think Nuggets fans might say that their historical dominance over the Lakers the last few years would have made the Lakers a good draw for them, but I think it's just a completely different Lakers team with Luka Doncic, so I wouldn't have felt as compelled there. I think the challenge for the Nuggets is, ultimately kind of finding their footing defensively is going to be a challenge in the playoffs. All these offenses are really, really top tier offenses. Denver's really struggled defensively during the course of this season. They've done this in a couple regular seasons in the past, but they've shown the ability to lock in on fourth quarter. And if you honed in on their fourth quarter and clutch defenses in past years, they were actually top of the league. They don't have that this year, and they lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in the offseason to be kind of their primary guard and on-ball defender. Aaron Gordon's still a very good defender. Christian Brown has been solid. Peyton Watson's a good defender, but has a hard time staying on the floor in the playoffs because of his offensive limitations. So how are they going to get enough stops defensively is kind of the ultimate question. Offensively, there's no question marks because Nikola Jokic has been the best offensive player that we've probably ever seen on the floor in terms of his level of efficiency and elevating teammates. And so they will be able to score in the playoffs against good playoff defenses. And that's why they've been a team that sort of outperformed expectations fairly consistently until last year in the playoffs. And so this matchup is tough, though. The Clippers are playing great. Kawhi's looked really healthy over the last 3 to 4 weeks of the season. He played in a back-to-back. He got his minutes up to 40 minutes in the last couple of games of the regular season. Looked great throughout those. And Kawhi's always been an exceptional playoff performer, obviously, getting the city of Toronto their title there. So I think it's a really tough draw. I expected this line opened like Denver minus 150, and I was very surprised at how high it opened. There's been a lot of sharp money respect for Denver over the years. So I thought where we're at would be the sharp money respect for Denver, but it opened a little bit more aggressive. I think the Clippers are going to take this series. I'm going to go against my heart a little bit in this one. And I think the longer odds for the Clippers in terms of title odds just reflect uncertainty on Kawhi Leonard making it through an entire playoff stretch. And I think that's ultimately the difference between these two teams. I think these two teams are valued fairly similarly, but the question marks on Denver's health are just much less serious in terms of you just have to worry about Jamal Murray. Nikola Jokic is always healthy. And with Kawhi, you just never know if he's going to be able to kind of make it and endure through a playoff run. He looks as good and as fit as he has in the last 7 or 8 years, kind of entering a playoff run. So I think this is the best version, which is hard to imagine because we had these Kawhi Leonard, Paul George teams. We thought that the Clippers were going to take a step back this year, but they've done a really nice job rounding out the roster. Ivica Zubac has had a brilliant season. James Harden has kind of had a renaissance, and this looks like the best version of the Clippers team we've had in the Kawhi era.
Eric, is Kawhi the type of player that when you see a 40-1 or a 45-1 to win the title, or maybe you just look at to win the West odds, that the bet is, hey, don't even worry about them beating Denver. If he can stay healthy, I think that they can beat whatever team, and you just embrace that variance of his health, and hopefully he can get through more than a series and a half, which we haven't seen in like half a decade, and just roll with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's baked into the price to some extent, too. I mean, Kawhi Leonard is a franchise-altering type player, two-way player. And it's not just necessarily him. It's like I keep thinking about the closing lineups in these games. Like Bogdan Bogdanovic, an interesting acquisition, had a really brutal start to his season with Atlanta, but he's offensive insurance, I would say, for what you've got with James Harden. Norman Powell, somebody who's working back from injury. We can see maybe the minutes ramped up even further here as the series goes along. But now you've also got this piece in Ben Simmons defensively that you can bring out in the like if in closing type lineups. I don't know. It's an element that I think makes this series very interesting to me. How Denver constructs with their minutes with Russell Westbrook. Like there's been so much talked about with Russell Westbrook and this Mike Malone deal and how everything's going about there. There's no doubt that Russell Westbrook is elevated by Nikola Jokic. We saw him with the Clippers and Lakers, and there was just so much inefficiency to his game, being asked to play a role that he doesn't necessarily have. He's not a knockdown shooter. He's not somebody who plays complementary basketball. He knows one speed only. I'm curious what his minutes are going to look like throughout this entire series, but I do think the Clippers do have a lot of advantages where they can play the offense-defense type styles towards the end of games with the Bogdanovic piece. I don't know if Derrick Jones necessarily needs to be out there for specific closing lineups, but I think the chess pieces that the Clippers have to utilize off the bench are a lot more interesting to me than the Nuggets. And that's where this series may come down to a couple of those clutch possessions, a play here or there. And I think the Clippers have at least given themselves a chance where, yeah, you look at the prices on each one of these specifically. I'd be more inclined to be betting Denver because I can see their path to a title a little bit clearer than I can see for the Clippers in certain spots where you need Kawhi Leonard and James Harden not just to play well, but to play really well against some of these other upper Western Conference teams, the Houston Rockets and obviously the Oklahoma City Thunder. So yeah, Kawhi Leonard makes a huge difference, but Denver, they still have Jokic. They still have the opportunity to play through him every single possession. And while Zubac has done an amazing job relative to other NBA centers against Jokic in the half court, it is still Nikola Jokic.
Now, I was going to ask Drew, but he's too big of a homer to give an objective response on Denver. So Eric, I'm going to throw it to you. If you were a fan of any of these teams in the playoff, in the first round, Game 7, you're down by 2, let's say. Let's even say you're down by 1. And the ball is swinging around with time coming off the clock. Is there anything a fan would fear more of any of these teams than that ball landing in the hands of Russell Westbrook with time expiring.
No, that's just batshit terrifying. I mean, like, what do you even do with in that moment? It's either I mean, dead center or it's air ball. Like, I mean, Russell Westbrook, there's no middle ground with this guy. That's what makes him such an interesting watch, and it has forever, is that he has one speed, he has one mentality, and that's that he's the best player on the floor at all times. And it's just who he is. And that's why he's the professional athlete that he is with the longevity he's had. But no, that's the worst feeling in the entire world, because Russell Westbrook end of game scenarios has never been, it's kind of like watching Rory yesterday on the back nine. You're just on a roller coaster, go along for the ride and see what happens.
Drew, is he weirdly one of the most fascinating people in the play? Like, should he even be on a playoff roster, or he should be a regular season only player?
Yeah, it's a good question. He hasn't been super impactful to winning in the postseason in quite some time, and I think there will be limitations this year as well. I actually think his story is one of the most interesting ones that just hasn't been covered by NBA media this year. But like a former MVP of the league who was averaging a triple double for a season and then went to some of the two different franchises in LA, struggled, and then like regained prominence in his career this year with Nikola Jokic. Like I think that's a pretty interesting story, but that one of the challenges that Denver has is their bench doesn't have a lot of depth. They don't have a lot of different ways to play. Pickett has come on really well in the second half of the season for them. I don't know how much they're going to trust him. Dave Adelman has said kind of towards the last few games of the season that they're just going to play the guys that are playing the best towards the end of the game. Julian Strother has been hurt towards the end of the season, so they haven't been able to get a long look at him. Peyton Watson has great defensive characteristics that you want in terms of one-on-one perimeter, on-ball defense, help defense, rim protection, but really has offensive limitations. So I think Russ, how he plays is in a lot of ways how Denver goes. And then you've got Jamal Murray's health. It's also a question mark too. So I think that is one of the weak points for the Denver Nuggets, whether Russ has, historically he's good enough to be on playoff rosters, but he underperforms his own expectations. This Denver team needs him to play well because they don't have a lot of depth behind their core five starters who are very, very good.
Drew, we'll stick with you for the Knicks and the Pistons, the 3-6 in the East. Seems like, hey, who gets the fun of winning a series and getting beat up by Boston? But maybe not. We've seen crazy things happen. As Eric pointed out, guys can get hurt. And maybe you said Jaylen Brown's maybe not healthy. Maybe, Kristaps Porzingis is like a giraffe walking on ice and just falls down and blows out his knee. I mean, crazier things have happened, I suppose. But these are now the scenarios that you need to look at. How big of a problem, Drew, are the Pistons for the Knicks here?
The market does not seem to think they're much of a problem. I was surprised by where the opening series lines have been on this, where Detroit's over 3-1 to win the series. I thought people were going to view the Knicks regular season as one where they beat up on a lot of the bottom feeder teams. They struggled against the top end competition, famously not getting a win against one of the top two seeds in either of the conferences this year. I thought that the market was going to be more skeptical of the New York Knicks' ability to kind of win this first round series. And this is the widest odds of any of the existing playoff matchups. Obviously we'll get 1 versus 8 and 2 versus 7s after the play-in. And I was caught off guard by that. I did not expect it to be this wide naturally. I do think the Knicks ultimately will move on in this series, but I think it's going to be a very competitive series. Detroit in the second half of the season, once they got Oscar Thompson back, once he was fully healthy, recovered from blood clot issues that he was dealing with early on in the season, he added a defensive layer to that first unit for Detroit that really helped things because they didn't have as much defense kind of in that first unit. They're relying a lot on Jalen Duren, whose play was kind of inconsistent. And then they had Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, who are, okay positional size, but not great individual defenders. Asar Thompson gave them a level of on-ball defense that really kind of changed the nature of this Detroit team, and they surged in the second half. And obviously Cade Cunningham, who's most likely going to be the most improved player in the league, has had an exceptional year. In the season series, it's tough to garner much from these two teams because when they played, there was almost always somebody missing. There was only one game where both teams had kind of their main guys. Detroit won that game, 124-119. I think it's ultimately going to come down to how well Detroit shoots the three ball in this one, as a lot of NBA series do. But the Knicks have been very good at limiting kind of points in the paint. They have an on-ball defender who I don't think they'll start the series with on Cade Cunningham, but they'll get there with OG Anunoby that I think can disrupt things for Cade. And ultimately, when they struggled against the Pistons in the regular season, it was their ability to get out to the three-point line on shooters like Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley. And Malik Beasley is just like constantly in motion hunting threes, and that can give the Knicks some problems. So I think the Knicks advance, but I think this series is tighter than the markets have it currently, and I was pretty surprised. I thought we were going to get something like the Knicks closer, like minus 250, minus 260, and they're well up over minus 300 kind of across the board.
Eric, how do you cap it? Because it is the Knicks minus 400 and the Pistons plus 310 right now in the series price.
Yeah, these are two of the interim bets that I've made. I'm on Detroit for this series, and it's a value. It's a value play more than it is like, oh, I think this is going to happen. Don't bet what you think. Bet what you think the price and probability are, and then you're going to be better in the long run. Hashtag math. But I am very much here for Detroit. One guy that I'm just curious what these lineups are going to look like for Detroit in the starting unit as well. Dennis Schroeder didn't really work out for Golden State for his brief stint that he had there, but we're talking about a guy who has kind of made his calling card internationally with FIBA. Dennis Schroeder played himself out of a lot of money with the Lakers, but then goes on to Germany on the Olympic team, and he goes down and he wins Player of the Year or Player of the Tournament for FIBA, beats up on the USA team himself. I mean, Dennis Schroeder, for being 6'1", he played much better defense and stayed on the floor for the Lakers in some of those series over D'Angelo Russell, and I think rightfully so. This is just an interesting guy where instead of just playing backup minutes to Cade Cunningham, they're starting to get that familiarity on the floor a little bit together too. Obviously, an acquisition here at the deadline, and that's really where this series is going to be. Malik Beasley, Dennis Schroeder. What can they get from them? Because Cade Cunningham has added that layer where not unguardable, but he's going to be such a difference maker in the game no matter what. I agree with Drew's sentiment where OG Anunoby makes sense as somebody who should be more on ball, a 6'7" dominant type defensive wing, and a decent enough offensive player in his own right, has definitely continued to evolve that part of his game over the last two seasons. But I like the Dennis Schroeder acquisition, and it seems pretty seamless because you can't play Marcus Sasser in a playoff series. You can't play Ron Holland in a playoff series and be serious. Like, this is truly a player in Dennis Schroeder who has been on some impactful playoff teams, has been on some impactful Olympic teams, and has made a huge, huge difference. I think he's kind of my other unsung hero potentially of this series, and just too wide of a number in my opinion.
So you have bet on the Pistons plus?
I have bet on the Pistons. Plus 320 is where I got it.
All right, it's the best number that I've seen so far. So Drew, finals.
There's 330 on DK right now.
Oh,
yeah.
There we go.
Just saying.
Just keep getting those prices up. So you have to. Do you have to go rebet that now, Eric? Now that you have the better number, if we're doing math.
Oh yeah. My 10 cents of lost value there that exists. Just get the better number for me, everybody. You'll be just fine.
Last series we haven't talked about, Bucks and Pacers. Do the Bucks have any life left, Drew, or is this just they're cooked right now?
It's interesting because the Clippers are the underdog that I took to win the series. But if I was to take the next best underdog to win a series, and pricing would agree with this, it's Milwaukee. Obviously, without Damian Lillard, who's still going to be reevaluated dealing with these blood clot issues, I do not expect him to play in the opening round of the series. Even when he is cleared, he's going to need some ramp up time to kind of get there. But this Bucks team, like, them and Indiana have a long history over the last few years. Indiana obviously eliminated them last year. That was a playoff series that both Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo were unable to finish. Giannis Antetokounmpo did not play in that playoff series, and Chris Middleton was really effective for the Bucks, kind of pushing it deeper. But Indiana, I think this is one of the worst matchups that they would get in terms of if they could pick their opponent outside of Boston and Cleveland in the Eastern Conference, because Indiana's strengths defensively are with Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith and their ability to lock down kind of on-ball scoring guard wing types. Aaron Nesmith is too small to lock down Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Andrew Nembhard has nobody to lock down in the series. Like, we're talking about Ryan Rollins. The Kevin Porter Jr. minutes will be important, but they don't really match up with their rotations. I'm interested to see if the rotation's going to change to get Andrew Nembhard on Kevin Porter Jr. more to try to disrupt him there in the second unit. And then Indiana, the way that they play defensively, they don't really help out, and they allow you to drive at the rim. And Giannis Antetokounmpo is willing to drive at the rim over and over and over again. And so I think, Milwaukee's got the best player in this series. Indiana's probably got the next I don't know, five best players on their side. But generally, when you are an underdog, if you have the best player in the series, you're pretty live. And so, I have not bet this one. I've been debating on the Milwaukee side of things, taking some action there, but. I think this is a tough matchup for Indiana. I ultimately think Indiana advances in this series, but I think it's going to be a long, close series. And I think Giannis Antetokounmpo can have one of those like epic series that we look back at where he averaged like 40, 15, and 10, something like that over the course of a series and really changed the course of this, what has seemed like it's been a little bit of a lost season for the Bucks since Damian Lillard was diagnosed with these blood clot issues. And since, they were unable to get Chris Middleton healthy during the season, had to turn to trading him for Kyle Kuzma. It looks like it had been a little bit of a lost season, but over the last 2 weeks, Giannis has come to life. They played really well, dug themselves out of a hole in the Eastern Conference, got to the 5th spot. They get Bobby Portis back from suspension. They're a little bit fuller now on the roster. They've got some shooting with Gary Trent and AJ Green. They've kind of figured out that they need to play AJ Green more, and his floor spacing is really valuable for Giannis. So I think the Bucks are a little bit more live than the market suggests that they are right now. I ultimately do think Indiana is going to advance here, but I think this is going to be a very good series.
So the pricing right now, Eric, is plus 175 for the Bucks, minus 210 for the Pacers. And fun fact, when AJ Green was going off at the beginning of the year, and I was like, AJ Green, when I Googled him, he did not look like what I thought he was going to look like.
Yeah, surprise. AJ Green, just knockdown shooter. You got to get him out on the floor for all the floor spacing reasons. Bobby Portis is definitely your X factor in this, where Bobby Portis can be instant offense off the bench. That seems to be the role that they want to keep him in no matter what. Acquisition of Kyle Kuzma, kind of a 1-for-1 swap. This version of Middleton this season wasn't exactly what the Bucks were looking for. And Damian Lillard, probably not this series, maybe not next series either, if they were to get by this one, where you would see him kind of resume potential playing whatever minutes possible there coming off of the blood clots. But Bobby Portis, he's having a much better defensive season this year as well in terms of estimated plus minus on dunks and threes. We're talking about like a 70th percentile defender. And if he's able to do that coming off of the last 2 years where that was definitely a part of his game that was lacking, I think we could see the Bucks be very, very live in this series. Plus Tyrese Halliburton, I mean, he's been awesome the second half of this season, but think about how many decisions in the Eastern Conference were already kind of set in stone. We had Cleveland run away from the pack in terms of the 1 seed. Boston, they were able to do a lot of the resting that they needed to do to get right and just be set up for another playoff run themselves. I feel like because all of the deck chairs were already aligned there in the Eastern Conference, Indy was able to just kind of get hot and roll over some really, really bad teams towards the end of this last season, and maybe inflated the way that you look at a Tyrese Halliburton, and maybe inflated this line a little bit as well, because there's no doubt he's looked much better in the second half of the NBA season as opposed to the first half, where Tyrese Halliburton, you had to be sitting on pins and needles as a Pacers fan, and me as an Iowa Stater, I definitely cheer for him, but there's some issues on the defensive end of the floor that if he's not making up for it on the offensive end of the floor, it can be a major problem for the Pacers going forward. So there's a lot of ways that the Bucks can be competitive here. I think the series price looks pretty efficient here at and running the data on it, it looks as though it's just going to be a stay away from me and enjoy, maybe more of like a live play based on how you appear those matchups through the first game.
Drew, has Jokic made us forget how good Giannis is?
I mean, Jokic, Shea, I think Luka at times in the last couple of years has certainly, overshadowed what Giannis has done with, since he's gotten his title with Drew Holiday, he's, played with Chris Middleton, who's been unable to play most of the seasons there. Damian Lillard, just acquired last season and was hurt at the end of this season. And Giannis kind of keeps on charging. I mean, he had a 35-20-20 game towards the end of the season, just insane production. But yeah, these guys at the very top of the league are like mastering skill sets in terms of offensive production in a way that we haven't seen in a while with the modern spacing that's allowed. And Giannis really takes advantage of that with his size and his athleticism. He's been exceptional and obviously a very, very key contributor defensively as well. And this is another series where I think both of these teams really match up well with each other from an offensive perspective. So I think there will be some variance in kind of the 3-point shooting and how it resolves things. But Giannis, he's going to have to be exceptional for the Bucks to advance here. And I think this is the perfect matchup for him to really showcase his exceptionalism.
Okay. So it does seem like, even based on what you guys have talked about, based on what the betting odds are telling us, that OKC Boston is the most likely outcome for what we're getting in the NBA Finals this year. So I'm going to throw it, instead of giving me your finals pick, since I'm guessing that's probably what your finals pick is anyway. Eric, starting with you, you can pick a final, but you can't have both of those teams in it. You have to remove one of them.
Oh, man, it's wild because I think there's 7 or 8 teams. I mean, we'll throw Golden State into the middle. We'll call it 7 teams in the West that have a case, or you could definitely see a path to getting in. But the East, I feel as though it's just kind of like a 2-horse race, even though it's the worst of the 2 conference. Like, I'm going to go Cleveland as potentially being your Eastern Conference darling here. Kenny Atkinson, the evolution of the offensive shooting for Evan Mobley, stepping out to the perimeter and knocking down shots, having a Ty Jerome off the bench. I mean, functionally being able to part with Karis LeVert and not have it be a huge loss for your team. DeAndre Hunter being acquired. We'll go Cleveland and Oklahoma City.
And Drew, back to you.
So I think if the way that you phrase the question, that would be the easiest answer would be Oklahoma City and Cleveland.
Yeah, but he already picked it. You can't use it.
No.
Yeah.
I know. I'm going in a different direction. Don't worry. So if you want the risk of looking like a complete fool and giving a team that might lose in the first round, but I think could have a surprising run, I think it's the Clippers. I would say Clippers and Boston would be my surprising. I think if you're going to see a surprise team, certainly outside of OKC, the Western Conference is just deeper with quality teams. I think what I've seen from the Clippers in the last month of the season has been really, really impressive with Kawhi coming on. I think they have a lot of roster versatility with Chris Dunn as a defender. Derek Jones Jr. is a big wing defender that they can kind of play matchups with. And I think Ty Lue is a very, very good head coach, generally gets more out of his teams in playoff series and is really good at like making teams have to kind of play with their non-dominant hand, essentially, like make them play with their weakest players. So if I was to pick a team from long distance to make a run, it would be the Clippers. I think the Clippers at like 15 to 20 to 1 to win the Western Conference is fairly intriguing. And just in general, those markets are tough. Futures markets are tough. There's a lot of juice baked into them. But I think in general, like the Clippers are a team that I think the market is evaluating based on 2 factors: their regular season performance as a whole and a lack of or a skepticism around Kawhi Leonard's long-term health. And I think both of those factors are creating a little bit of value on the Clippers.
I have a group chat of friends that we just talk about basketball with. They don't watch any of my shows, and they will be watching this one. And here's the thing, Drew. They're all Lakers fans, and it sounds like they're going to be yelling at me after listening to this hour of content.
They probably will. I mean, the Lakers have a very legitimate path as well, right? Like Luka Doncic and LeBron James, with the way LeBron has played this year, you have the 2 best players in most of the series that you're getting, and they have a lot of defensive versatility in the way that they can roll through. I just think that they're not that big, like they're priced efficiently in the market, right? Like they're 6.5 to 1, something like that, to win the Western Conference. That feels right in terms of winning 3 series. Like I think that's actually, in general, the Lakers are a tough team to get value on in the markets, right? Because they're a very public team, they're a very popular team. People want to bet on them, especially with the acquisition of Luka Doncic. So I would say, like, if you asked me to do a totem pole of teams that are likeliest to win the title, I think I'd have the Lakers probably 3rd or 4th on that totem pole, dealing with, Cleveland flip-flopping, Cleveland getting the better end of it by having a weaker conference that they have to roll through. So it's not meant in any shade towards the Lakers. It's just that they're generally priced efficiently in the market.
Eric, what do you think is a more egregious future price right now? Lakers to win the finals 14 to 1, or the Warriors 16 to 1 to win the finals?
Wait, what? Warriors are I mean, that's just absurd. I saw like 17, 20, okay, 23 on FanDuel. Like there's some interesting numbers that exist right now, but Golden State having to play a play-in tournament and then rolling through the West. Oh yeah, have fun with that. Let me know how that goes for you long term. I mean, if you want to make the most negative EV bet on Golden State here at that number. It's absurd.
Any take on the play-in games themselves? That anything that we should be betting on either side? There's a team you have no faith in whatsoever, Eric?
I suppose one of the fun talking points is like, if you are the 7-8, do you want to win that game and play Boston, or is it better to end up accidentally losing that one, falling to potentially getting Cleveland there as the 8 seed? I don't know. I'd be somewhat intrigued to just look at backing whatever team it would be to to potentially in that second play-in game out of the East being the more apt price that you could maybe back to move out of the Eastern Conference or something. But more than likely, I mean, we've talked at length about how dominant those two teams are relative to the rest of the conference. Probably won't do it, but in terms of the play-in games, I do think the most enjoyable one is going to be Memphis Golden State, just because you get John Morant, Steph Curry, and just similar styles there between those two, and obviously the best shooter of all time in Steph Curry, one of the most intriguing playmakers of the modern game right now in John Morant. A lot of complementary pieces. Memphis wanting to push the pace, but yeah, I'm curious who Drew thinks is the most intriguing of the play-in games, because like for me, it's that one by a landslide.
Yeah, I think that game is the most compelling game from a real basketball watching perspective for sure. And I actually thought the total on that game opened a little light. It was around 228, and both those teams I think have significant advantages against the opposing defense, more so on Golden State side. I think Golden State is a heavy favorite and deservingly so in that game. But I think the big thing is like the playing games, there's going to be such a different level from the playing games to the playoff games, because some of these teams in the Eastern Conference and the play-in just don't belong in the playoffs. They're just not playoff caliber teams. In the back end of the Western Conference, that 9-10 game of Sacramento and Dallas, those two teams are really depleted as well. So like that's the only the Golden State Memphis is the only game that you look at and you're like, oh, one of these teams could maybe make a series out of the next round. I don't think anybody else that's in there can really make a series out of the next round. I think if you like really love basketball, like you'll deal with Chicago, Miami, and Atlanta, Orlando, and Dallas, Sacramento. But I think if you're like a casual fan who's looking for like playoff level basketball, I think those playing games are kind of disappointing outside of Golden State, Memphis.
Drew, what happened to Orlando?
Yeah, so Jalen Suggs is a really underrated player, like really, really valuable player. If you look at some of the analytics and defensive metrics and different things like that, he's really, really valuable, like on par with Paolo Banchero in terms of overall value. He's just not looked at that way because defense, doesn't make highlights. His loss really, really hurt them quite a bit this season. They lost a lot of their defensive identity there. And then Paolo Banchero, it took him a while and kind of coming back from his injury to kind of find an efficient level of scoring. Really in the last month of the season, he started to kind of find the game that we expected to see Paolo Banchero kind of take this next step forward early in his career here. And him and Franz Wagner, very, very good individual players. They had held out hope of kind of building a core defensive identity around Jalen Suggs. Goga Bitadze had a concussion in the middle of the year that, like, as soon as he returned from that concussion, his play has just not been the same as it was early in the season. They went to Wendell Carter Jr. as the starting center there and have relied on him heavily. They haven't gotten a lot out of Jonathan Isaac, who they relied on in the playoffs last year. So, like, a lot of their key defenders all kind of took a step down, and they don't have enough offense. They have to be a great defensive team, at least at this point in the iteration of them. So you've seen like them lose Jalen Suggs, Goga Bitadze took a step down, Jonathan Isaac took a step down defensively, and all of a sudden they're like an above average defensive team, but not a great defensive team. And they still struggle to score offensively against good defenses because of their limitations in terms of their roster. But they were a team I was very high on. I would like over 47.5 was one of my biggest positions this year on them coming into the season. Obviously, Franz missed a lot of time. Paolo missed a lot of time. Suggs missed a lot of time. So like injuries impacted it. But they've been one of the biggest disappointments because I thought their trajectory was like straight up after last year.
Eric, what is going on over at Odd Shopper this week? Obviously, I mentioned the boost promo that Underdog is putting on right now. I've dabbled around with the Odd Shopper tools. I've had some wins over there. I might have to get back in so I can take advantage of these profit boosts.
Yeah, you got to take advantage of that. Portfolio EV is the way you want to do it. You can use promo code HOOPS. That gets you 2 weeks free to be able to go check it out. It's one of the best market-based tools that exists in the entire industry. You want to check that out over at oddshopper.com. Would love to have you guys over there.
Yeah, so the Extender is the name of the promo over at Underdog. Drew, I assume that you guys are already grinding what these numbers are going to be looking like on a day-to-day basis for the NBA playoffs over at Establish the Run.
Of course, yeah. You can check out any of our premium content, both on the DFS side and on the prop side at establishedrun.com/subscribe-NBA. But yeah, we'll be working on all the numbers, trying to figure out the individual player projections. We're providing all content and context around those with our injury shows that are behind the paywall, as well as our DFS shows that break down those slates from a DFS tilt. And I love playoff basketball. I think it's like a real ball knowers type of time in terms of how coaches are going to adjust and what you think they're going to do. And obviously, we don't know what the coaches are going to do, but we're just trying to guess at it. But I love love the idea of trying to figure out where it looks like there's vulnerabilities and how coaches are going to adjust and what personnel they're going to use to adjust, because I think it's like a real fun time to get a lot of edge, both on the DFS side and on the betting side of things.
Yeah, so once again, for everything, establishtheRun.com, oddshopper.com, and at Underdog, code Mayo right now get you that deposit bonus of up to $1,000. And as long as you get in on game one of any series and play it all the way through, a 40% boost on game one, culminating if you do it every single game of that series. Game 7 will have a 100% profit boost on Underdog. So they are just giving you ways to win extra money on Underdog for the NBA playoffs, and getting both sets of tools is probably the best way that you want to go with everything. That's what I'm going to be doing for the NBA playoffs, to try to churn over some of my money and walk out with a profit. All right, you smash like while you're here, you sub to Mayo Media Network, and I will see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!